We want to. Kuwait, are you ready for Mr. David Wise? 10 years ago, myself and Dave went out. We had a 70-piece symphonic orchestra. We had a choir. Tonight, Dave has brought one drummer for your entertainment this evening. 30 years, everybody around the world has known the music of David Wise. He first started 30 years ago with Ware Records, with Wizards and Warriors, Battletoads, and also working with Steven Spielberg on Ready Player One. So Dave's music has been around for eons. It was scored by Alan Silvestri, who framed Roger Rabbit fame. They worked on that film together. And Dave started working with Nintendo on Super Donkey Kong and also Donkey Kong Country. And he also scored Diddy Kong Racing Star and Fox Adventures. And his famous one was Sticky Bush Symphony on Diddy's Kong Quest. 3 games, 3D Adventure, Snake Pass, and Yooka-Laylee, that you're going to hear some of those tonight. And also coming out soon in May, on May the 4th be with you, will be Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. So with all that said and done, he is a living legend on this planet, and we welcome here to Kuwait the legendary Mr. David Wise!
So thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me over to Kuwait. I'm enjoying it so far. We'll have some more sax later. So I brought along my friend Nigel. He plays drums, clearly. Does a good intro speech as well. So I'm just going to talk a bit of the background about my career and some of the stuff I've done with Nintendo, because it didn't always sound like that. Because when I started out, we had this thing called the NES. That's what I started working on, which basically sounds like a glorified doorbell. So just to give you an idea. Oh, yeah. So this is Rare Limited, by the way. This is where I first started working a couple of years ago now. Well, maybe a bit longer. So that's me in the middle. We've got the guy who did the graphics all the way on the left, and the guys who own the company on the right-hand side. And that's what I looked like when I started working. I would like to say that time hasn't been kind. I didn't always have a laptop to work with. I had these very basic instruments, like an old Juno 2, but they came in pretty handy. There's a little sequencer, and on the top left, you've got a picture of a Yamaha CX-5, and that was my first ever music computer. So, the first game I ever did was a game for the NES, and it was called Slalom. It's not a very sophisticated game. So a bit of background here. When I first started working at Rare, they'd bought me all these nice synths, big synths that sounded huge. And they sent me to work for 3 weeks, and I put some big tunes together using all of this gear. Sounded great. Well, it did to me. And then they said, that's great, Dave, but you've got to put it onto the NES. Now, the NES has 4 sounds. Like, it's got 2 square waves, triangle wave, which sounds like an owl hooting. And it's got a little bit of a sound chip. And so my very first composition for the NES was this next one. So that was very early days, because when you just play, when you play a sound on a keyboard, you've got all this movement. And obviously, if you play the same thing on the NES, you've got those bitty bleeps. So I soon had to learn that you've got to do a lot more work. And the Japanese composers that we've seen today, well, they were streets ahead of what I could do. So I had to learn pretty quickly. So it took about 3 years and a lot of experimenting, a lot of listening, and eventually we got it to sound like this. Thank you. So we had to move things along, and since those days, I've been able to use lots and lots and lots of different synths and laptops and computers all wired together. Now, I'm going to try a different instrument here. It might not work, it might fail, but, you know, who cares? So I'm going to try this instrument. It's a melodica. And I'm not very good at playing the melodica. In fact, I'm not very good at playing anything, but I'll have a go. It hasn't done me so bad. So I'm just going to give it a whirl. There we go. I think that'll work. So eventually, Nintendo, we started working on this technology called Advanced Computer Graphics, which was just an ACM for an acronym. And it meant we'd got this 3D rendered graphics. And this is what kind of started our involvement with Nintendo. And the first game I worked on with Nintendo was really Donkey Kong Country. And one of the more familiar tracks is this next one. Thank you very much. So we did that whilst I worked at Rare, which was in the middle of the countryside. nothing around it. It's just hundreds of acres of countryside. So that's all we had to do to get on with it. Years later, when we were working for Microsoft, things, you know, they got a bit rocky every now and again, and several people started to leave. And long after I'd left Microsoft, we had some other guys leave, and they decided to form their own company, and it was called Playtonic. There's Playtonic. So this was an offshoot of Rare, so quite a lot of the guys who worked on a game called Banjo-Kazooie. I don't know if anybody's heard of that. So they decided that they were going to set up a company and make basically Banjo-Kazooie 3, which they called Yooka-Laylee. So I had the great pleasure to work with someone you might have heard of called Grant Kirkhope. Also Steve Burke, who used to work at Rare. And all the programmers, artists from the team, we decided to make this game. Now, I'm going to try and play Yooka-Laylee. Again, you know, it's a bit ooh and ah. Especially with this microphone, but we'll give it a go. Is that working? Doesn't seem very loud. I think it needs to go up. Well, we'll try it. No, we're going to try something different. When I'm composing, I normally have electronic drums like the ones over in the corner. So I do a lot of the percussion parts using electronic drums. So we're going to do a track. Hopefully it's going to work, but Nigel's going to demonstrate the drums on this one. Yeah, this is a track called Scorch Torch. Okay, sadly the video might not be working. I'll see if I can I'll just plug it in and out. See how Anyway, we'll go ahead. Anyway, this is called Scorch and Torch. It's you're running for your line. Nigel Atkins. So we're going to try, I'm going to try this wind synth here. Now, when you're playing in your bedroom, when you're playing at home in your recording studio, you can go over and over and over and over and over again and get it right. Now, when you're playing live, it's a bit different because you're quite nervous. And when I'm nervous, my hands get really dry. And when I'm really dry, the contacts don't quite work properly. So, but we'll give it a go. Let me just see. So I've got my Valdunican chair. If anyone's British and you've seen Valdunican, that's my Valdunican chair. So I'm going to sit down for this one. It's very lazy, but we'll stand up for the next two. So I stood on the lead there. That's a technical fault. Right, I'm going to talk about Snake Pass in a minute. Okay, so I had a phone call and it said Sumo Digital calling, and they were making a 3D adventure game. which is very fortunate. So yeah, that should be working. Do you want to just take the lead out and plug it back in again? Thanks. And so they phoned me up and they said, well, it's going to be very South American. So we had to find lots of South American instruments to play. So I found lots of South American flutes, lots of bamboo things, bamboo marimbas, bamboo drums, a lot of guitar, a lot of nylon guitar. And hopefully this should work. Thank you. Very kind. Now, before I do my last number, it's been a great honor because, you know, when you play video game music or you write it, you get invited around the world. And also, your music gets used for lots of different projects on strange little things throughout the internet. So I'm just going to play you a short video of how somebody used a track that a few people might know.
I'm so scared that I'll never get put back together. Yeah, you're breaking me in, and this is how we will live with you and me.
Playing Donkey Kong. Bramble Scramble, man. That level's hard. Now you gotta Yeah. Why make that level so hard? That music is dope though. Yo, the more I grow up and get my life on track, the more I feel myself getting pulled back. The unbeatable odds that I'm facing got me thinking it's a game that I can't win. Like back when I was in school and they released Donkey Kong Country 2. That was a hard-ass game. I never beat it, and I ain't been the same. So when the stress starts pulling me under, I start feeling like I'm back in the jungle, trying to stack bananas like building blocks. Might go ape shit on a million crocs. Grab that barrel and put him to bed. Hit a motherfucking bumblebee over the head. Bad guys stay on cadence like a drum line. I guess life gets that way sometimes.
Sometimes life is impossible, like that one level with the thorns and shit. When reptile pirates get the upper hand, I can't understand why'd you make this level so hard. I got a whole bunch of bananas, but I ain't trying make this level so hard. I got a whole bunch of bananas, but I ain't trying nothing for this level. I got a whole bunch of bananas, but I ain't trying nothing for this. I got a whole bunch of bananas, but I ain't got nothing for answers. I got a whole bunch of bananas. Oh man.
What do you want to do today?
Man, I was thinking.
Okay, so let's have the sax slightly up in the mix. So back to Rare. When I left Rare, it was actually owned by Microsoft, and they didn't want to do 3D games anymore. And so I got fed up and left. On the day I left, this very nice studio called Retro Studios over in Texas phoned me up, and they said, well, if you're not working at Microsoft anymore, why don't you come and do some work for us? So about a year later, I went over to Texas, met them for a Christmas dinner, and we talked about perhaps doing another Donkey Kong game. So that turned out to be Tropical Freeze. And I know it's a bit of a plug, but on May the 4th, it's the Switch version's coming out. So if you haven't already got it on the Wii U, please go and get it. It's a great game. But then I'm bound to say that. So we did a few different versions whilst we were over at Retro Studios of different things. And to finish this, we're going to try and play it out with this one. Sorry, we're going to start again because I can't hear a thing. I'm sure you can't. I want my sax high in my monitor and out the front. It's going down in volume. I want the sax higher so I can hear it, please. Thank you so much.
Make a big noise in Kuwait, Mr. David Wise!
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. And thank you, everyone, for your hospitality. It's been fantastic. Thank you.
جماعة تشجيع حق ديفيد 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 نايجن ديفيد